Hey folks, I'm William, this is RuneForged, welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to be going over my most recent game of Warhammer The Old World, which I played online using warhall.eu. If you'd like to find out more about Warhall, there is a link down in the description. This is a 2,000 point battle between my Dwarf Royal Clan and my opponent's Empire Knightly Order armies. Just as a heads up, I am still pretty new to the game, so if you notice any mistakes or if you have any recommendations for how I might be able to improve, definitely leave that down in the comments section. All right, so just to go through the list very quickly, I have an Anvil of Doom with the Master Rune of Adamant to give it toughness 10. Then embedded in this long unit of Longbeards over here, I do have a King, who is my army's general. He's also mounted on shield bearers for some additional wounds and some additional attacks. He is also wielding a great weapon inscribed with the Master Rune of Smiting, which lets him do 1d6 damage per wound. Then, inscribed on his full plate armor, he also has a Master Rune of Gromril for a 2-up armor save, as well as a Rune of Preservation, which makes him immune to the Killing Blow and Multiple Wounds special rules. Then finally, he also has a Rune of the Furnace, which gives him a 3-up ward save versus flaming attacks. Next, also embedded in that large unit of Longbeards is a Runesmith, who is also serving as my army's Battle Standard Bearer per the Royal Clan's special rules. His banner is inscribed with the Master Rune of Grungni, giving that whole unit a 5-up ward save, as well as a Rune of Battle, which gives it additional +1 combat resolution. Finally, he's got 3 runes of Spellbreaking to give him some auto-dispelling power. Then in my core, I have one large 29-man unit of Longbeards. They are drilled and are equipped with great weapons as well as shields. There is a champion in that unit with the Rune of Passage, allowing them to move through cover, as well as a Standard Bearer, which also has the Rune of Battle, and a Strolaz Rune, which also gives the unit Vanguard deployment. In my special slots, I have a Bugman's Cart, which you can see right here, as well as a single Grudge Thrower, which has 1 Rune of Forging on it, which will allow me to reroll a misfire once per game. Finally, in my rare slot, I have a 18-man unit of Iron Drakes. There is a champion in that unit with Cinderblast Bombs, as well as a Trollhammer Torpedo. And there's also a Standard Bearer in that unit who has the Rune of Courage, which makes that unit immune to fear and terror to make sure that I can get off those crucial stand and shoots, as well as another Strolaz Rune, which also helps this unit to Vanguard deploy. Next, we'll just quickly go through my opponent's army. I'm not as familiar with this list, so we're just going to hit the highlights. On the flanks here, you see 2 4-man units of regular Empire Knights. There's also a level 4 wizard here with the Battle Magic lore mounted on a Pegasus. For magic items, that wizard has a Wizard Staff, a Twin-Tailed Wand, and a Ruby Ring of Ruin. Then over here on the right middle side, you have a 9-man unit of Inner Circle Knights who are led by a Chapter Master with a Jade Amulet, and they are part of the Order of the Knights of Moor. Finally, there is a 6-man unit of Demigryph Knights who also have a Chapter Master in there, also on a Demigryph. He is the army's Battle Standard Bearer. He has the Banner of Iron Resolve, the Armor of Fortune, and is also a member of the Order of the Knights of Moor. Then, finally, to cap things off, the general of this army is a Grand Master, also mounted on a Demigryph. This general has twice blessed armor, a potion of toughness, a jade amulet, the white cloak, and is also a member of the Order of the Knights of Moor. Just to talk a little bit about the deployment here. Overall, I'm not super psyched about my deployment in this game. I don't think the map was doing me any favors. I would really have liked to have deployed both the Iron Drakes and the Longbeards a little bit wider than they are currently, but I was really worried about getting caught up in this dangerous terrain, which is these ruins over here on my right flank. I also don't really like the position of my Grudge Thrower for reasons that will probably become clear later in the game. And as always, I am still very unsure what I should be doing with my Bugman's Cart, especially if I'm not intending on charging across the map early in the game. As for my opponent's deployment, I think this is a very solid deployment here. He's got these small units of Empire Knights in the flank, and their job is just to zoom down the side of the board and get into my back rank as quickly as possible. Then he's got his 2 very beefy units of Knights here in the middle, supported by multiple characters, including that level 4 wizard. So I think my opponent did a very good job with deployment here, and I don't feel very good about my own deployment, but it is what it is. Definitely let me know down in the comments if you think there was a better way for me to deploy during this game. I'd really love to hear your opinions on that. All right, so prior to the beginning of Dwarf Turn 1, I did Vanguard deploy my guys up just a little bit here with the goal of getting a little bit closer with my unit of Iron Drakes here, hoping I can get some sort of turn 1 shooting off. Unfortunately, that did not work out for me the way that I had hoped it would. Luckily for me, I did manage to get the armor buff off on the Longbeards here, so they're a little bit tankier than they otherwise would be. And then I also moved up the cart behind this building. Really, my intention is just to use it to hopefully slow down the enemy advance to the best of its ability. In my shooting phase, the Grudge Thrower does manage to deal 2 wounds to the Demigryph Knights, so that is a good start for them. Unfortunately, none of my other shooting is in range on turn 1. Then, moving into Empire turn 1, you can see my opponent just moved across the field. Then, during the shooting phase, a Lucky Fireball manages to take out one of the Longbeards. I think all of the other magic either failed or failed to penetrate the Longbeard's armor. All right, moving into Dwarf Turn 2. Unfortunately, I was unable to get the armor buff off on this turn. I think I rolled a natural 2 on 2d6, so that was a little bit unfortunate. During my movement phase, I did wheel the Iron Drakes up just a little bit in order to try and get a better line of fire on these approaching Demigryph Knights. In retrospect, probably not the best idea, but we'll talk more about that in just a minute. I also turned around the cart here and tried to move it out in front of these knights. Really, again, I'm just trying to delay them as much as possible. My original plan was to use the anvil to move the cart again and get right up as close as possible to these knights. So hopefully that would waste an additional turn for them on the way in. Spoiler alert, that is not how it ended up happening, as I failed the cast on the anvil here and I was not able to move the cart again this turn. During my shooting phase, the Iron Drakes did shoot into the Demigryph Knights, managing to kill one and injure another, so that's pretty decent. And also my anvil cast his magic missile into the unit of Inner Circle Knights over here. I did manage to get the spell off, but unfortunately I rolled, again, I rolled a 2 on 2d6 to determine the number of shots that it had. It did manage to take out one of the Inner Circle Knights, but unfortunately not as much damage as I was hoping for. Also during this turn, during my shooting phase, I shot the Grudge Thrower over at this unit of Demigryph Knights here. I did manage to hit one, but unfortunately I think they saved using their 6-up ward save, so unlucky there. All right, so moving into Empire turn 2. As you can see, this unit of Inner Circle Knights did charge into the Dwarf Cart here. And these knights on the outside flanks continue moving down the edge of the board, trying to get into my back line as quickly as possible. During my opponent's shooting phase, he did manage to pick off about 4 more of the Longbeards with the magic coming out of the wizard over here. And in the close combat phase, as you can see, he managed to completely wipe that Dwarven cart and actually ended up overrunning into the side of my Iron Drakes. This is really unfortunate for me, as this means that I'm not getting a stand and shoot. I'm not going to be able to shoot the Iron Drakes next turn because they're engaged in combat. And also when this combat does happen on my turn next turn, it's very likely that I'm not going to be getting any attacks back. And he's almost certainly going to be winning this combat. All right, so moving on into Dwarf turn 3. I tried to cast the armor buff using the anvil. Unfortunately, I failed to get that off. In my movement phase, I shuffled the Longbeards over to the side and then used the move again ability from the anvil to kind of redress my ranks here to get a broader frontage, as broad a frontage as possible without running into this dangerous terrain over here. In my shooting phase, not much happened. I did try to use the anvil to cast magic missile on the wizard over here. Unfortunately, I did fail just barely due to the wizard's innate magic resistance. So again, a little bit unlucky. I also shot the Grudge Thrower here into this unit of Demigryph Knights once again. I did manage to land a solid hit, but unfortunately he was able to save once again. And of course, the Iron Drakes were not able to shoot because they are engaged in combat. So unfortunately, a pretty depressing shooting phase for the dwarves on turn 3. As to be expected during this close combat phase here with the Iron Drakes, the Knights did manage to take out 4 of them, which meant I was not able to attack back because the fighting rank only has 1 person in it, and that person was slain during the charge. So as a surprise to no one, the Iron Drakes did lose that combat. I opted to use their Stubborn to just fall back in good order back through the rest of my units. Actually, and in retrospect, I'm not actually sure that I should have gone this way. I think I probably should have gone down towards the bottom left. But that would have put me into this impassable terrain here. And I'm not really sure how we should have resolved this. So if you know, definitely let me know down in the comments. All right, moving into Empire turn 3. As you can see here, both of these very nasty units of knights do charge headlong into that unit of Longbeards. And these unit of knights in the flank continue moving down the field and trying to get into my back line. In my opponent's shooting phase, he does manage to take out another Iron Drake with a fireball from this wizard over here, and he also manages to get off a Pillar of Flame. In the close combat phase, my opponent manages to kill 10 of the Longbeards here, and unfortunately, I only managed to kill 3 of the Inner Circle Knights and deal 1 wound to one of the Demigryphs. My king did get to attack. I think he hit 3 or 4 of his attacks, but unfortunately, even though he only needed 2s to wound against these Inner Circle Knights, he did roll all 1s on his to wound roll. So again, a little bit unlucky on that roll. And unfortunately, after the combat resolution was tallied, I ended up losing by 6, which means that I needed a 4 or lower in order to give ground. And if I didn't give ground and I fell back in good order, I would be falling back off the edge of the board, completely destroying that unit. Spoiler alert, that is exactly what happened. I ended up rolling a 6. I fell back in good order, but unfortunately there was not enough room for me at the edge, so I did end up going off, and that unit was completely destroyed. And as you might expect, shortly thereafter, I did concede the game. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get a screenshot of the ending kind of score sheet, but my opponent did win by well over 1,000 points, probably close to 12 or 1,300, after you count the fact that he also destroyed my general, as well as 2 banners by destroying this unit in the midfield. So overall, not a great game for the dwarves, and I'll certainly be adding another entry to my book of grudges. Kind of thinking back on the game and what I could have done differently, I think there's probably at least 2 points where I made some pretty serious mistakes in this game. I think the first and most important was when I decided to wheel this unit of Iron Drakes, try and get a better shot on these Demigryph Knights. In retrospect, that was opening up my flank for a pretty nasty charge from these Knights. And I should have expected that even if I was able to get this cart a little bit closer by not failing the movement spell from the anvil, this was still a possibility that they were going to get into my flank, and it would have been much safer for me to just stay in kind of the standard straight line position I was at the beginning of the game. The next major mistake that I made was during this combat with the Longbeards. I elected to use great weapons during this combat because I just have a better chance of dealing damage to these knights. But I really should have expected the fact that my front line was probably not going to be super effective in this fight, because most of them were probably going to die to the incoming charge. In retrospect, I really should have used my hand weapons and shield instead. Not only would that have given me a better chance for more Longbeards surviving, but I also would have been able to make use of my shield walled ability, which would have let me give ground instead of falling back in good order. So that would have basically just bumped me right back, probably right on the anvil here, and I would have had at least 1 more turn to try and turn this combat around. Also, because I'd given ground, my opponent would only be able to follow up here or risk me charging into him instead. And in either situation, he's not getting the benefit of his lances, so he's no longer wounding me on 2s and instead is wounding me on 4s, which is a vast improvement over what it was in the first turn. And while it probably would have been a little bit of a long shot for me to win after this point, I do think there is a chance that I could have done so, especially if my king had another round of attacks and he didn't manage to whiff all of his wound rolls. And I also think that if I had managed to win this combat here and wipe out these knights, or at least break them, there is a very real chance that I actually go on to win this game, especially if I'm able to take out his general during the course of that combat, as I'd be getting a ton of points for him just normally, also 100 points for him being the general, an additional 75 points because he is the person that I marked as having a grudge at the beginning of the game, which is one of the Royal Clan special rules. Other than those 2 kind of major mistakes that I think that I made, I still don't really know what I should have done better in my deployment. Again, definitely let me know down in the comments if you think there was something better that I could have done in the situation. I think that the only thing that I can say for sure is that I probably should have had this grudge thrower moved a little bit further over to the left behind this building, which maybe would have given me some additional room on the fallback here and a chance not to immediately run off the edge of the map with this first lost combat. It would mean that this grudge thrower may be a little bit more vulnerable to the knights coming over on the flank, but I think I just have to accept the fact that I cannot guard this grudge thrower very well, and I just need to sacrifice it in order to create some room in my backfield here. I am playing this list in preparation for an upcoming tournament league, so I can't actually change my list now. It's kind of locked in, but after this tournament's over, I'm giving some pretty serious thought to dropping the grudge thrower from my list. Occasionally it does do some pretty great things, but it's just so incredibly inconsistent, and it very ever rarely actually pays for itself. So I'm not sure that it's worth the points that I'm spending on it. Anyway, I hope that you did enjoy this battle report. If so, please consider checking out this next video, which should be popping up on your screen right about now. Also, please consider aiding me in my eternal struggle against the dreaded YouTube algorithm by crushing those like and subscribe buttons so you don't miss out on more awesome old world content like this in the future. But I think that's about it for now. Thank you so much for watching and have a wonderful day. Bye.